most Americans go about their day. And that's how it should be. The CIA is the invisible hand of the U.S. government. Okay, they got my social security number, they got my date of birth, they know my address. What does that matter? You've given a third party complete access, and they didn't have to do anything, they didn't have to crack anything, you just gave it to them. You think no one cares about me, no one's interested in what I'm doing, but they may care about, Americans need to know that if that becomes the standard behavior, where we don't care about our personal privacy, then no one has privacy. And the only country that can push back on them in any way is really us. We have to win this AI war against China. If we don't, everything we believe on the West is in serious risk.
Who would you say is our greatest adversary?
Here's the sad part.
My guest this week brings a truly unique perspective on leadership, intelligence, and global strategy, extending across both the public and private sectors. As a U.S. Navy veteran and former CIA operations officer, Rick de la Torre spent over 2 decades leading complex intelligence missions around the world, helping governments and corporations navigate geopolitical risk, especially across Latin America. Rick is founder and CEO of Tower Strategy, a government relations and strategic advisory firm that guides clients through the federal decision-making processes of the U.S. legislative, executive, and regulatory branches. As a Cuban American whose family fled communism, he carries a deep passion and understanding of what's at stake in the global fight for freedom and democracy. Take a listen. Thanks for your interest in sticking around to watch or listen to my podcast, dedicated to providing tools and resources to help you claim and live your best life. If you're loving these conversations, make sure you hit that bell to subscribe or follow and never miss an episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. Don't forget to tap the like and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's grow this community of curious, driven minds together. Rick, I want to start with this, right?
Right.
What is the CIA, for those who don't know? What is its objectives, and why is it important? Right. We can start there.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. So CIA is the Central Intelligence Agency. Mm-hmm. The Central Intelligence Agency was created back in 1947 by the Executive Office and then passed into Congress. It was the Central Intelligence Act that created the Central Intelligence Agency, and then there's been other acts and executive orders that have amended the role and the jobs of the CIA. But basically, what the CIA is it is the invisible hand of the U.S. government. It is what allows the U.S. government to collect information on our foreign adversaries, and primarily using human intelligence sources to collect that information. Once we get that information, then different departments and directorates actually within the CIA take that information. They then process it, they review it, and at the end, what you get is a finished intelligence product. That intelligence product is then shared with other members of the intelligence community, and with the President of the United States, and with members of certain members of Congress and the executive branch. So all the U.S. policymakers, all the folks that have to make decisions regarding U.S. Foreign policies, regarding military, regarding diplomatic issues, world leaders, world events, terrorism in particular, narcotics, all these things play a role in that information. So the Central Intelligence Agency then takes that product, they share it with the policymakers, making them more informed, so that when they pass laws or take decisions, whether they're military or whether they're decisions, regarding diplomatic efforts or issues overseas, that prepares them and gives them the extra advantage that we expect our policymakers to have.
Right. And what is your connection to the CIA?
So I am a retired case officer from the Directorate of Operations of the CIA. I spent a number of years operating as a operations case officer for the CIA, and that means what my job is basically to steal secrets, and recruit spies.
Wow, sounds fascinating, like a movie. So what?
Just like it.
Sure. So let's get into what led you down this path, right? How did you go from being just regular career guy, right? If that's a thing, but what led
Right.
you down the path of the CIA?
Well, I think, well, a lot of things, right. It dates back, I guess, to being a child, right, and being blessed to be born and living and growing up in this country. Child of Cuban exiled immigrants who came to this country, right, fleeing communism at the time. You grow up with a certain sense of patriotism, responsibility, and an understanding of the human condition that I think a lot of people don't. That a lot of other people might not have or fully appreciate. So at least in my household, that was it, right? So there was always a sense of service, and I think what really and I had served in the naval U.S. Navy Reserves and everything, but what really kind of cemented things for me was shortly, obviously the horrific events of 9/11, and then that kind of put things into perspective for me in a lot of ways, and that meant, do I want to live a life, a very great, happy, successful life, working in manufacturing or in sales or whatever, or is there more that I can do? And it was something I just wrestled with a long time. So I started applying. I applied to a few other federal agencies, and mostly in law enforcement kind of capacities. And I went online and I applied to the CIA, and a few months later I get a phone call, and that kicked off the entire hiring process. And before I knew it, a number of years went by, and I retired.
Wow. Yeah, and that's a side conversation as well, because we have that in common, right? Families that exiled or left communist Cuba, and I grew up hearing the same things, right? About how, and we know each other personally, right?
Yeah.
But one of the benefits that I had truly was my grandmother, who you knew as well, lived to be almost 108. And so there were a lot of stories, and she lived in communist Cuba until she was 70. That's when she came to the States. And there were a lot of stories that she shared. And I think that more than anything in my family, those were the stories that made me that much more patriotic. Understanding not just, that there was a revolution, but what her life was like in Cuba until she came here. She had a lot of stories and a lot to share. And even being in the States, when she'd hear certain things, saying, I've heard this before. And it didn't put me on high alert, but it definitely made me aware and had me paying attention to things like that. So thank you for your service, because I think committing your life to something like that is very, not just inspiring, but, something that I think most of us need to be grateful for, regardless of what we believe in or what side we're on or what have you. There are people actively out there protecting us in many different capacities. So, well, let's take a step back to 9/11, right? Because that's sort of, regardless of what you were hearing at home when you were growing up, that sort of kicked things off for you in a very different way. And what was that experience like for you?
Well, look, I think and this goes back also to my time in the Navy Reserves, right? You when you're in that world of either law enforcement or the military or the intelligence community or anything that's our diplomatic colleagues in the State Department, whenever you're in any of these roles that you're exposed to the outside world, right? It gives you a sense of appreciation and perspective that I think most Americans, or I don't say most Americans, but a large number of Americans in our country might not fully understand or have, right? So realizing what happened on that horrible day, and the war footing we immediately had to take on. I knew that there were real people out there that just wanted to kill you, right? They just want to kill you. They want to kill you not because they dislike you, but they just hate everything that you are, whether because you're a woman, whether because you pray to a different god, whether who you sleep with or who you don't sleep with, and that, and that was something that was growing. It was marching, and it could affect us. I think prior to 9/11, many of us felt that, look, that's way over there, right? That can't touch us, and that's those people's problems, wherever those people are around the globe,
right?
And we felt very comfortable knowing that we have rule of law and a democracy and an elected form of government and the freedoms that we have. But that's not what most of the world is. Most of the world does not have those things. So when that attack happened, what I noticed was obviously that, hey, the same way my parents, your parents, right, how quickly they went from democracy to totalitarianism, that could happen. That could certainly happen in any Western society, and that could certainly happen in our country too. Right. So, that really was what that motivated me to like, I have to get in the game somehow, right? I've got to, and I think like most folks that of our age that were around during 9/11, we all had the same feelings too. Like, hey, we want to kill terrorists, right? We need to get them because they're, because it's real, and it had been going on for a lot longer before 9/11, right? There were plenty of other attacks against the U.S. and U.S. personnel on the U.S. home front, but that was the one that obviously caused everyone to make the real concerted effort, and we still do it today. All those things still actually happen.
I have a question about the agency, and there are opposing views on the CIA. What would you say? Clearly you're for it, but what would you say to people who are opposed to even having this agency?
Yeah, look, I understand for the most part, right? Some folks come at that and the criticisms of the agency, they come at it from a good place, right? In other words, they're concerned about the entrenchment on individual rights, on American rights, on activities, and the American people have a right to know, sure. Where their tax dollars go and what their government does for them, right? They certainly have a right to know. I think it's a shift in concept that you have to consider. For example, the secrets that we collect, right? The information that we collect that we classify as secret, that doesn't belong to the CIA. That doesn't belong to the President of the United States. It belongs to the people of the United States, right? So all these items, everything we collect, we ultimately do declassify and provide that to the people so that they know what they're thinking. Now there's reasons why, obvious reasons, or where you can't declassify something right away, right? Because it could put other people in harm's way if they were somehow involved with that. So sometimes you have to wait until people die, until until the people that were involved in whatever operation or whatever it was actually pass away. So so some of those frustrations, right, they come from the right place. Others, though, are just people that just don't know, right? They just don't. They haven't taken the time to really learn about the wonderful men and women who work at the agency and take it very seriously and take it as a call to protect their country, right? To protect the United States at every at every step we can. Look, there are some folks that will never understand and or accept that there are people, there are groups of people, either motivated by politics, by fanaticism, by religion, by drugs, by anything, that want to harm us, right? And they want to harm us every day. And the United States faces that challenge, not just in the bad places, but even here at home, right? We face that challenge in cybersecurity issues. We face that challenge with illegal migration. We face that challenge, with their with other intelligence agencies and organizations trying to steal our secrets and our plans and intentions. So there's a, that's a battle that's fought every day. It's fought in the shadows, and most Americans go about their day, and that's how it should be, really. I mean, it's kind of like, that's our job, right? We'll do our job. You don't even have to thank us for it, but just know that we're going to do the best thing that we possibly can. I think if more critics would really get a better idea of how structured the agency is, how we do follow the law, how we work cooperatively and consistently with the executive branch, with the National Security Council, with our Congress, and we're held to be account, right? There are oversight committees in Congress that make sure that the CIA follows the law. We have an inspector general. We have an army of lawyers, and so we are very careful to make sure that we follow the law, and that everything we do is lawful, and that the right people who need to know in government knows about it. The CIA just doesn't do things out of thin blue air. We just don't decide, oh, we're going to go do this, right? Mm-hmm. And no, there's an actual structure there where it needs to benefit policymakers. It has to be something that will benefit the United States. And there's an entire method there to handling that information and making sure it's preserved.
Right. This job has taken you to many places, correct?
Yeah. I've traveled the world.
Yeah, and spent some time away too, right?
Yeah.
Well, not time away as in.
No, I know what you mean.
I don't know, couple guys here, so.
Yeah.
So it's taken you to many places across the world, and you've had to make many sacrifices to do that level of work. And it's it's like the military, right? You spend time away to take secretly working in the background, right? Not everybody knows that it's happening or whatever, but we walk through in the U.S. us as citizens, as resident aliens, anyone who's here gets to benefit from that, not even completely aware of what is happening in the background. That's commendable, Rick.
Well, look, you're absolutely right. Thank you, but I'm just one of many, right? And thank God we've got plenty of people who want to do not just the work I did, but other work, right? Whether it's Customs and Border Patrol, whether it's your local law enforcement, firefighters, right? That sense of giving, right? Of something's bigger than you, and giving to your community, and helping your neighbor and fellow citizen out. Look, you do. There's, like in everything, there's trade-offs. Right. And I've got plenty of friends in the corporate world that miss plenty of birthdays and
sure.
And holidays and kids' birthday parties and all that stuff. And there's no guarantee that wouldn't have happened to me either. The way I guess I rationalized it was, well, hell, if that's my future anyway, might as well do it for something greater than me in some capacity. And and I guess it's really hard for me to reconcile, like, here I am complaining about, oh, gee, I'm missing Thanksgiving with my family, right? But knowing that there's some, like, 18, 19-year-old on the front line somewhere in a war zone who's also missing his Thanksgiving with his family, right? And so I'm no better than them, right? So that's just part of the sacrifice that you kind of have to make. And and other things too, but there's certainly benefits, right? If not, who would do this kind of stuff? But it does take a toll on your family. It takes a toll on your wife, on my wife. It takes a toll on the kids, and you hope and pray that you've got enough energy and reserve to make up where those deficiencies occur.
Right. Can you talk about the biggest surprise having been in the agency? Like, what surprised you? What was the most alarming thing you came across? Like, did you have a real
that's a great
shit moment, or did you have many while being away that you're allowed to share?
Oh, okay, sure. Well, I mean, I think So one thing that really surprised me, I guess, about the organization. There's a lot of things, right? I got to tell you,
Sure.
every day is an excitement at CIA, right? Because every day something's new. The world, the world woke up that morning and something changed, right?
Right.
And we need to now figure out, well, whatever it was that changed, how does that impact something else? And
Right.
and try to put those puzzle pieces together. And the president needs to know that, like, right away. So
Right.
so I think one of the things that really surprised me was first of all the authentic diversity of the folks within the agency, and I mean authentic diversity in the sense of all the different walks of life of of Americans that they came from, right? Rural, city, left, right, rich, poor, all the different races and genres and religions, and they were all just kind of pulled together with the same idea, right? So that's one thing that really surprised me, and then the other thing was how smart everyone is at the CIA. They're just, and I was consistent. I got to tell you, I probably was always the dumbest guy in just about every room in the agency. Because these guys are really, really, really smart, right? Advanced degrees, folks that would be millionaires, billionaires in any industry, real leaders, right? Especially within the Directorate of Operations, because of the personality types that we tend to gravitate towards when it comes to hiring. It just reminded me. So the person who's considered like the father of the CIA, right, was who fought in World War I and headed the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, during World War II, was a guy named Wild Bill Donovan, right? And we kind of consider him the creator of the CIA. And when they asked him once, well, what do you look for in an intelligence officer, to go out and do that? What kind of officer do we want in the CIA? It's rumored that he said we need PhDs who could win bar fights, and that kind of gives you an interesting perspective, right, as to what they're looking for, what we need, and I growing up, within the agency, all those years I spent in there, the folks I worked with, I think that's the best way to describe them, as PhDs who could win bar fights.
Right. So passionate on many levels, right?
Yeah.
Passionate with education and passionate with patriotism.
Yeah, a lot of alpha.
Right?
A lot of alpha personalities, right? A lot of alpha personalities. But be surprised, not everyone is extroverted. A lot of introverted personalities too.
Yeah.
Right. But you got to understand too. We can't afford to get things wrong. When things get wrong, right? And I'm not saying we're perfect, right? And usually this is one of the sad parts about the agency. When we get it wrong, you read about it in the Washington Post, but you never read about everything else that we got right.
Right.
And that's okay. We're used to that. The problem is that every day we make sure that we can't get it wrong. There's zero risk, right? It can't be 99% sure. It can't be 98% sure. You've got to make sure that it's with great certainty, right? That whatever it is you're doing is correct to the best of your knowledge, that it's being carried out ethically, legally, that everything's dotted, all the T's are crossed, and that you're doing it with the security of the United States and the people you're interacting with. Because as in my job is recruiting spies, right? I go to foreign countries and I got to recruit a spy. Well, that spy, who's now working for us, right, and providing us information, that person is in great danger if his government ever found out what they were doing. And in a lot of these countries, you don't face, you don't get indicted and go to court. No, you just get a bullet in the back of your head. And not just you, but like the whole family. And your parents and your children and your grandparents, or they get shipped off to a concentration camp. So we take that responsibility so seriously, right? We take that responsibility to heart in everything we do. And what we found is other intelligence services around the world, they don't take that view. but we do, and we honor our commitments, and we make sure that we take care of our own.
I think on the heels of that, my next question would be, how does it work once you're within the agency, right? So you applied, which makes me think people can apply and
Of course.
and
Yeah,
join the
people should apply.
agency,
You're
right?
right.
It's not this whole like thing
No.
that only the PhDs who could
No.
win a bar fight, right?
Right.
But
You got
so
to apply. Yeah.
right. Right. And so kind of what I want, the message I want to deliver is that this is, anyone can try, right? You can apply. It doesn't mean you're going to get the job, right? But,
Right.
I think, when people think of, the CIA, they think about like these operatives, in the shadows.
Right. The cloak and dagger stuff. And
Yeah.
that does occur, by the way. Yeah.
Pardon?
Yeah, I said, and that does occur, right? There's
Sure.
plenty of cloak and dagger stuff, right?
Right. But there are a lot of jobs that are not that. I would say the majority of the jobs don't do that. So can you explain what some of the other jobs would be?
Within the agency, sure.
Within
and
the
by the way,
agency?
look, yeah. So definitely apply, right?
Right.
If you think someone's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, we've had our eye on you, and we think your government needs you," yeah, it doesn't work that way, right?
Right.
You go, you apply, you upload your resume, you look at the jobs that are being offered, and
Right.
and if it's a fit, it's a fit. The agency is blessed that there is way more people who apply than there are actual jobs for.
Right.
So that does mean it's extremely competitive, right?
Right.
And then the selection and training process makes sure that built on over 75 years of history, that we're going to prepare you to succeed in that job, and we're going to arm you with the skill sets, the knowledge, the capabilities, the trade craft that you need to be
Right.
successful. And so getting hired is the hard part. Passing the training is another milestone, and then you get the opportunity to do your job. And then the training doesn't stop there. You continue training throughout the rest of your career, like in any job.
Sure.
Now, everything I've described to you from my perspective is within that directorate of operations, where I served as a case officer. But we've got our directorate of analysis that these are analysts who take that information that those of us in operations collect. We give it to
Right.
them. Then they take that information along with information from the other intelligence community partners, from friendly foreign intelligence community partners, open sources like the internet and magazines and whatever, and they put all that together, and then their finished product is actual an intelligence report. And the biggest job at the directorate of analysis, what the analysts do there is they have one job, and that is to publish every day, every morning, without fail, the president's daily briefing, the PDB. And this book, the PDB, is started under the Truman administration. It continues every day. It is what the president needs to know right away, and it's in a format. The format's changed.
Yeah.
Obama used to like it in an iPad. Some presidents, like it thick, like a thick book. Others just want it, summarized. But that gives, the briefer goes, meets with the president of the United States and says, "Hey, Mr. President, while in the last 24 hours, or this is what's happened. This is what's
Right.
going on around the world." Right. So that's the role of the directorate of analysis. And then we've got other directorates too that focus on other issues that are important to to the world. And these directorates deal with things like science and technology. Those are like in the James Bond movies, the people who came up with the cool gadgets that that did stuff.
Yeah.
We've got a directorate that does that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And they come up with some very, very cool technology. Being able to hide things in places that you would never suspect that they could be hidden. Being able to use electronics in creative ways. It's all very, very cutting edge stuff These are these are folks coming from some of our best universities, and really, I don't want to say like they're improving things. They're inventing things. They are inventing things that we don't even know about yet. So these directorates all are focused on different perspectives, different issues, right? That then come together and then provide their services so that we can do things like the PDB, right? They give that to the president and then carry out, other operations around the world.
Yeah. Who would you say is our greatest adversary?
Right now, China. Yeah, China without a doubt. Oh, absolutely, China.
China.
China. We've been, my personal opinion, I think, when 9/11 happened, right, we had to focus, and we had to focus very quickly on some immediate threats, right? And then that led to our engagements in Afghanistan and Iraq and in that part of the world.
Yeah.
During that time, we kind of weren't paying attention to other things that maybe we should have been paying attention to. And our enemies, they didn't go to sleep, right? They didn't say, okay, well, we're going to go focus on, the Americans are busy. So, what China has done over the last 20, 30 years is really embed itself in just about every important sector within our country. And in such a way that it's created this dependency on China from just about everything that we need, right? Whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's food, whether it's stuff to grow food, energy, electronics, semiconductor product. Just look around the house, right? Everything you see in there. That then means that we have to depend on them. And if we ever had to become real adversaries, right, like go to war kind of thing, and I hope we don't, but let's say we ever did, well, we're at a disadvantage right away. And then the Chinese, sadly, they haven't been partners with us in any real way, right?
Right.
Yes, they sell us things, but if you just read any newspaper. If you look at the stuff that the Chinese have done to us in technologies, where they steal our IP, they steal the work we're doing, and then they take it back home to China and they develop it. They're actively trying to steal everything that they can from our academies and from businesses. They go. If you're a business and you've got something that's really cool and cutting edge, and it could fit into a national security kind of portfolio or something for the military, they're going to target you. They're going to go after you. Even our personal information, and we know about this in from the news reports, right? They hack into healthcare companies and hospitals and the local DMV or whatever, and they steal all your personal information. They know exactly who you are, where you live, how old you are. And you say, well, okay, but that doesn't really directly affect me. Right, but it's setting the stage. It's setting the groundwork for something that, again, leaves us at a disadvantage in so many ways. And that's not just happening against us here in the United States. They do that actively against most Western countries. And they do see us as an adversary. So since we're the only ones that could kind of stop them from encroaching, in places like Taiwan and in Africa and in Latin America, well, that means they have to deal with us in a lot of ways. And that's why you see in the news now a lot of issues regarding, say, the Panama Canal, or what's happening in Africa, regarding critical minerals and items that we need to keep our manufacturing and industrial base going. So China's been really sneaky about this, and sometimes not so sneaky, but they want to control as much as they can. Here in the United States, and so they are without a doubt our biggest adversary. They're our biggest adversary who could actually do something, right? They have the capability, they have the technology. They're a serious threat. The good news is that I think things have been shifting and changing over the last year. We are now kind of waking up to that. When I started at the agency, and I would go brief and meet policymakers, and it didn't matter what side of the aisle they were on. And I tell them, hey, this is what China's doing, right? This is what we need to be careful about. They're hacking into our cell phone systems, our satellite systems. They're tracking our military. They're buying our farmland, right? They're doing this in these other countries too, right? And we depend on that other country for oil or for soybean, whatever we needed from it, right? They were actively trying to go against it. A lot of the policymakers were like, okay, well, yeah, I get it, but you know what? There are trading partners, and it's just a business thing, and we'll work it out, kind of thing. And towards the end of my career, finally people were waking up to that, and finally people were like saying, hey, this is not friendly competition, right?
Right.
No, this is setting the groundwork and the stage for Chinese dominance in a lot of things that are important to the United States. Right. And would put us at a serious disadvantage. So I'm glad to see that we've kind of maybe turned a page there, and we're working now hopefully in the right direction, and can actually push back on a lot of that stuff.
Going into the change, policymaker, what they saw, where they started to say, okay, I see it now. Was there like a pivotal moment where that happened? Was it gradual over time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, look, their stance towards Taiwan is obviously very adversarial, right?
Right.
And we know that the Chinese government wants to take over Taiwan and make it part of mainland China, and the Taiwanese obviously they don't want that.
Obviously.
That complicates world events because 90% of our semiconductors come from Taiwan. Mm-hmm. Right? So, every electronic gadget that has a semiconductor, there's a good chance some component of that comes from Taiwan. And not to mention just like the human rights, the democracy, the big picture things, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, Taiwan is like a slow burn, right? It isn't like they just woke up one day and said, yeah, we're going to take on the Americans. No, it's just a little poking, a little prodding every day, an inch forward. That's all we need. And it starts with their Belt and Road Initiative, where they go to countries that are lesser developed, that have critical minerals or oil or whatever it is they need. And the Chinese say, hey, look, we will buy all that oil for you, and we'll build you this great port or this great refining facility or this great airport. And we're going to give you, we'll give you all the money to build it, and we'll give it to you at quote unquote reasonable terms so you can pay us back.
Right.
And, a lot of these countries fall for that. And sadly, what happens when they fall for that, they wind up becoming a debtor nation to China. Because the interest doesn't go away, the economics of that country are usually squandered, and all those natural resources, all those things just go to feed the Chinese, system. So that's something that they've been doing since the mid '90s, late '90s kind of thing. But it's really accelerated in the last 10 or so years. Then and then from a military standpoint. Their brazen, really brazen arms deals that they do with our adversaries, where they sell weapon systems to folks that also want to hurt us. So there's a long history of China really just looking out for China, and someone can say, well, wait a minute, aren't we doing the same thing? Isn't America just looking out for America?
Yeah.
Well, the difference is that. The same values that we look out for in America, right, are the same values we share with our European colleagues, with a lot of the countries in Latin America, with a lot of countries in Asia, and with a lot of countries in Africa, right? So there's this movement of freedom and democracy and representative government that we're all trying to protect.
Right.
China wants to do away with all of that and make it a totalitarian state. Right, similar to what you have in China right now.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, it's really the only power out there, the only country that can push back on them in any way is really us. There's no one else. There really isn't anyone else. So once again, right? Thinking about World War II and thinking about prior things in our history. Once again, it's really the United States and folks like at the CIA and our military that have to defend the greater world in a lot of ways. And that's kind of like where we're at now with China. It just continues to be that way.
Yeah. And I think just looking at their government and how they run things in that country, that's just evident in why they would want to take over someone else. I want to scale it back a little bit because you've given us a big picture from a government perspective, from a business perspective, even farming here in the US, right?
Right.
The average person would probably say, what does my data have to do with anything? Why would anyone care about, what's on my TikTok or, my own personal information that, by the way, I feel oftentimes we are freely giving out, right?
Oh my God. Yeah.
And people don't realize that. So when someone thinks or says, I'm too small for anyone to care about,
right?
Why would that be an incorrect statement?
Oh, you nailed it right on the head, and that's a great question, right? So I want you to think of it this way, right? And think of it from a data collection standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
If the more data you have, right, the better you can paint a picture.
Right.
And you say, well, who wants all this ridiculous amount of data? Like, where are they going to store it? How are you going to go through it? Well, you're thinking along an analog kind of mindset, and that's not how you can't think that way, right? You have to think now in quantum and in AI mindsets, in the sense of you could take really, really huge, large pools of data, and you can very quickly, accurately, within microseconds, get the results and answers to to what you need. So you say, well, okay, but really, like, what do I care that they got my social security number, they got my date of birth, they know my address. What does that matter?
Yeah, what could they do with that? Right.
Yeah. How does that fit into the big national security scheme, right? Well, let's take a step back. Let's think of this. You take, like you said, we quickly click on those little things that say, yes, share my personal information, or we type in, into some app or some game, whatever, and we tell the app, you have complete access to my photos, to my microphone, to my camera, to my geolocation, and basically what you've just done is you've given a third party complete access to your mobile device, to your laptop or tablet or whatever, right?
Right.
Complete access. And they didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to crack anything. They didn't have to put any malicious code on anything. You just gave it to them.
You just gave it away.
So you say, well, okay, but it's an app, right? Well, if you go to the App Store and find out where a lot of these apps come from, where they originate. In the country of India, I didn't know this, I found out recently. In the country of India, they barred all Chinese apps. Period. So when you live in a totalitarian country like China, where let's say you're a developer and you come up with an app, right, like a TikTok or something like that, and the Chinese government says, hey, we want all that information. We want all the addresses. We want all the geolocation information. We want it all, and you got to give it to them. You don't have a choice, right? So you say, okay, well, fine. Now they know that I do all these things. Great. Well, here's the thing, right? Let's say I want to know not about you, but about your neighbor. Your neighbor who happens to work for, I don't know, in a classified setting, or works for the CIA or works for the NSA or something like that, right? Well, I've got a listening device, a camera, a geolocation device now in your phone right next to your neighbor. So things like, what cars are parked in front of your house, what times, are the lights on, when do people come and go, right? Or maybe you have your neighbor's information on your phone, right? Like his contact details, phone number, address, name, right? Well, then now I could use that information now too. and I could piece together different things, and I can attack things from everything from the from the home security cameras, the CCTV cameras around you, right? The local banks, ATMs, the traffic cameras, the telematics that your car gives out, from when you drive to how long you drove, where you drove to, what music you listened to, what phone calls you took. All that information there, and I get to now really focus my attention on your neighbor and everything about them, right? Because I got to your neighbor through you, and you didn't even know it. Or let's just fast forward. Data doesn't expire, right? So let's think about your kid, right? And let's say your kid decides to go work for one day for the CIA or the military or something, right? Well, now I've got information not just on them, but on their parents, right? On their circle of friends. And I can link all that stuff together through AI and through, other complex computer systems, and get a much clearer picture of what I want and need. And so you could see a scenario, right, where a teenager going through a very difficult time in their life starts posting things on social media, like all teenagers do, right? And, a few years later, everyone kind of forgets about it and you move on. Well, that might not be the case, right? Watch this individual now be up for a political position or an elected position. And something that they did a number of years ago could be really, really embarrassing. And you thought you deleted it all, right? Because you hit the delete button. Well, it didn't really get deleted. Right.
So truly, there will be no skeletons in the closet, because everything, even if it's your neighbor, becomes known. Wow.
Right. Well, yeah. So, it becomes known to the right people.
Right.
Right. It's very different if, you messed up and you hit send and you sent a naughty video of yourself to everybody you know. Okay. That was your fault. That's on you.
Yeah.
But it's a very different thing where you expect to have privacy, right? Where you expect to have privacy either in your home or your banking relationships or your emails, right? That you don't. And that can be used against you. And that puts you at a disadvantage, obviously. That puts, depending who you are, that could put your country at a disadvantage. So that's the kind of stuff that the Chinese look for. And then you've got aggregate data things you could calculate too. You could calculate things like, what do people believe? How many people are doing this? How many people are not doing this? And then you could use that to shape your understanding of your target nation, and also see if you want to maybe invest in affecting some changes. Right? So if I know that there's a target group of people in any country, or let's say our adversaries want to do this to us, and we've seen examples of this in the 2016-2020 elections, where it didn't matter supporting one candidate over another. It just mattered that Americans were at each other's throats. That's the only thing that mattered, right? It didn't matter that we're going to support this candidate over that candidate. Instead, what we want is Americans just losing, freaking out on social media, protesting, arguing, and you can control that stuff with that kind of aggregate data. You now know who to target, who's more susceptible to listen to that message, and how best to craft that message just right so that it gets them just to do what you need them to do, whether wittingly or unwittingly. And I would argue that a lot of that stuff still continues today, and we're seeing it play out on our streets every day.
Yeah. It's almost to keep them either to do what you want them to do or distracted, right? Like, that's how I see it. It's like, well, let's do this. Let's distract them so we could go do this. And that's something that I've sort of noticed. But just currently in season 2, we had a guest who he's a senior lecturer over at the University of Sydney, and his focus is on ethical innovation because of the issues that we're seeing specifically with younger people, mostly, but not only, on companion AI. And the level of, it's almost like journaling digitally.
Exactly.
And one of the things that we talked about on that episode was not just like the romantic aspects that are happening, including someone in their 50s marrying their companion AI, but also what's happening. Watch the episode.
Okay.
It's interesting. But what's interesting is that, especially with younger people, I think people who are before digital was such a way of life, right? I think younger people just think, oh, I'm going to talk to my companion AI, and literally like journaling and having a relationship with an AI companion, that level of detail, like whose hands does that fall in? And
Right.
they literally have no idea that there is potentially something sinister behind that, right? When you're talking about these apps that are not even developed here,
No.
right? Like who owns it? The majority of them are owned by the Chinese. So I know because I download a lot of apps, and that's
Right.
the first thing I look for is, who,
Right.
where is this app coming from? Because
Right.
it's very telling, but it's not even like the apps you're downloading, but when you're allowing things to cross, connect on your phone, on your laptop, whatever, that's kind of like something nobody's looking at. Nobody's thinking about that. You got people
No,
with
I
50
mean,
apps on their phone, not even just hitting terms and agreement.
Right. Keep going.
Who's
Keep
the
going. Right.
unaware? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Look. So look, I'm guilty of that myself, right? I don't have time to read the 20 pages of terms from when I buy Microsoft Word.
Right.
But I'm much more confident in doing business with Microsoft Word than I am with some silly game app that I just downloaded. Right.
Yeah.
Connect dots. Oh, or get points, or hunt monsters with your phone and take pictures of them. I mean, think about that. Right?
Right.
If I wanted to learn about a building or a facility or something, right? I'll just put some goofy animal that you need to go collect, right, on your social, on the game that you need to go take a picture of, and I'll just put that animal there, and within minutes, right, a gazillion people will show up and take photos of the, and what I'm focusing on is on what's in the background, right? So I think people are starting to kind of get a little bit better at that. When you just talked about the AI stuff, that stuff really scares me too because, besides the human connection thing and the psychology and all of that, right? From a security, personal security and real security standpoint, you're oversharing and ultimately that AI is on someone's server somewhere, right? Being run and managed by some company. So, and I've always found that interesting how Americans are really, really concerned about government snooping on them, but they have no problem with corporations knowing everything about them.
Right. Do you think they're aware of that?
I don't know. Sometimes it gets better. I mean, sometimes folks get better. Like, there was an app I was downloading, which I thought I needed and then realized I really didn't. But one of the things they started asking me for was, give me your name. I'm like, okay, I'll give you my name. Your email address. Okay. Give you my email address. Then it starts, I need your physical address and your phone number. How old are you? Male or female? And I was like, I don't need to give you any of that stuff.
Right.
Like, why would I give you all that stuff? Now, the technology gets smarter and smarter too, to kind of, and here's the sad part, that we think, okay, well, look, I'll just lie on those things, right? When I fill them out. Or, I don't have to give them my real name, right? But there's a workaround all that too, right? And that's called your ad ID. That's on your phone. So when you turn on your phone, the moment you turn it on and that signal hits the first tower, one of the things it sends back is it puts this little like a cookie, right? Like when we go to websites, right? It puts a little piece of code on your phone that says you are ID number, and it generates like this long sequence number, and that's you. Right? That's an anonymous you because it doesn't know what your name is, your phone, it doesn't know any of you personal stuff. But what it's done is it's tagged you. It's giving you an ad ID number. And now that ad ID number sits on your phone, and every time you scroll or click on something or visit something with your phone, it shares that with them. This is the ad ID. That ad ID is what drives the advertisement that you see whenever you Google, wood floors for the house. And then now for the next 6 months, all you get are ads about, wood flooring and renovation and construction people and financing for your wood floors. All those things are good, right? And the consumer, from a consumer, wouldn't it be great, right? That's what we kind of want that technology to do. But let's say I know your ad ID number, and I start really now piecing together all the things that you're interested in. I don't know your name, I don't know your phone, but I know you visit, that you hit the website of the local city hall, right? To do business, to pay your taxes at the city hall. Then I know that you log into an office building, right? To look about the traffic patterns or the parking at a specific office building downtown, and you do that every morning at 8 a.m., right? And then you do it at a residential community in the suburbs every afternoon at 5 p.m. And so you start piecing all these things together, right? That you go on Facebook and you go to group chats about, about flowers and puppy dogs, and it doesn't matter. I start piecing all these things together, and now I know who you are, but I may still not even know your name. But that's still good enough for me, right? Because then if I have a suspicion, I could maybe generate other stuff. I could maybe do things maliciously to get the rest of the information I need and want. So the other thing too is that ad ID that you share, when you share it with some of these companies and you give them your name and number, then anybody in this country, I could pay them, and I think most Americans cost about 1/10 of a penny. I could buy that information, right, for 1/10 of a penny, and get your ad ID number, get all your likes, your dislikes, all the things that you're into, what area you live in or travel to. What social media accounts you like to use, what operating system you use, right? What language is that operating system in? And now I can build that picture, and it costs me nothing. And this is done every day. This is done every day.
Right. So they can literally create a profile that fits whatever they want. Right, whatever it is that they're looking for, they can, based on all of that information, create a profile that serves them. Basically.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. No, that's exactly it. So you could see, if you're in the military and you visit a lot of military websites and and all that stuff, right? And let's say you're young and single, but then you also go on the dating apps, right?
Right.
Well, if I want to work against you, right, and you're visiting those dating apps, right, isn't it awesome that I know what your likes and dislikes are, right?
Wow.
And if I look at your Facebook page, I know that all your ex-girlfriends were blonde, and right, so it just so happens that the person's going to swipe on your Tinder profile is going to be this beautiful blonde person who likes the same sports team that you likes, that lives in this, that has all these shared things, right? That thinks like you and is just a perfect fit for you.
The perfect person, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and here's the best part. That person that does the swiping right doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it could be totally AI.
Right.
Right? And auto-generated with no human pulling any levers whatsoever.
But still a catfish, no matter what.
But still a catfish.
Still a catfish.
So then we could tell the military guy, hey, you're really cute. I want to meet you. And if he says yes, well then okay, and you can see how this develops into something that could be problematic, right? For if they decide to target folks like that.
Yeah.
So you don't know what you don't know. You don't know, you think look, no one cares about me. No one's interested in what I'm doing. But they may care about your brother. They may care about your sister, your daughter, your son. Certainly it doesn't hurt them to collect the information and just keep it. So you're still feeding that machine. And then a good example of this is when, TikTok, which is Chinese owned, this administration has tried to change its ownership, to do things. When finally, Congress and the administration started to take steps, right, to really focus on the problems with TikTok from a personal and national security standpoint.
Right.
ByteDance, which owns TikTok, what did they do? They started flooding the TikTok users with the information that they needed so that the TikTok users could then call their congressman, call the White House, call the politicians and say, please don't take away my TikTok.
Right.
Which proves the point that that social media in the wrong hands can move a lot of people very quickly for nefarious things with very little pushback.
Right. And you know, what's interesting to me because I was going to ask about TikTok. What's interesting to me is when I learned that in China, where TikTok originates from, the users in China, it's like 100% educational.
Oh, it's a totally different experience.
In the States, and I'm not sure about other countries, but in the States,
it's stupid
it's
stuff.
about, you can make $1 million on TikTok. Listen to me right now.
Yeah, 6'7".
Dance moves and puppies and, you know, flowers, like you said. But it's almost like we don't go deep enough to understand those aspects, right? It's like I see people opposing, you know, banning TikTok in the States, but are you asking why? Right? Versus it's kind of like what you were saying. Everybody's all creeped out by the government, you know, keeping an eye on them or, you know, being creepy in the background. But like TikTok, you're not worried about? It surprises me how many people don't ask about TikTok and why TikTok is, you know, so worrisome.
I mean, TikTok is one of those apps that you share everything with, right? You got to give it access to your photos. You've got to give it access to you know, to your contacts and you know, into your microphone.
Yeah.
So
I think one of the most alarming things is when you're using an app specifically based on your content, right? Whether it's your photos or your videos. In the moment it says that I have to give it access to all of my photos and videos, I'm like, why the heck do you need all that? Like, I just want to select the photos and videos I want to. And to me, that's just like a red flag of an app I'm almost regretful I downloaded, you know, because I'm like,
no, there's a lot of people in the same shoes too. Yeah. You know, these are things that, you know, it has a lot to do with the American psyche and how we use things, how we use tools, right? You know, you know, we're part of a, you know, it's a great time to be alive, right? Because, you know, in our pockets, we carry just about the entire continuum of human knowledge, right? It's all there. It's one click away or one tap away. And the fact that we spend so much time looking at cat videos as opposed to, like, you know, solving, you know, the world's problems, right? I don't know. But, you know, in China, you're right. It's a very, very different social media experiment. There's no anonymity at all, zero anonymity in social media in China. The government does track you if you complain too much, if you criticize too much, or you say the wrong things. They take away your social media. You know, they make sure you're marked as a problem, right? And you know, your standing in the community, in the society, if you think about it, is kind of dependent on everyone else in that, you know, in that circle, right? So you're not, you know, you don't toe the, you know, the China thinking the way you should. So we look down on you, right? So you erase, you know, individual expression, you erase individual thought, innovation, initiative, right? All these things, you know, are what suffer at that. We live in a free world. We live in a free democracy. If you want to post, as long as it's not, you know, something that violates the U.S. law, you can post whatever the hell you want, right? And that's fine. Right. But Americans need to know that, like everything in life, it's always a give and take. And you know, if that becomes the standard behavior for everyone, where we don't care about our personal privacy, then no one has privacy. Right. Because it's not enough that it's not enough that I put a passcode on my computer now, right? I've got to make sure everyone around me has a password on the computer. It's every technology that touches my technology has a password, right? And all the different people are all aligned and thinking like I am. And, you know, obviously that's very difficult to do, right? That's not how we're set up, especially companies, right? 'Cause companies are set up to share. You want to share information. You want to work together. You want to collaborate. You want to develop together. And and the people you do that with can be down the hallway or in Indonesia, right, or in Africa or anywhere in the world. And because that's where the greatness comes from. But we just need to think about that a little bit more. And not just run into it so quickly. And I look, I think I have a lot of confidence in the American people. We're going to get it right. Sometimes it takes us a little while, but we'll get this right, and we'll be better for it.
Yeah, I think a lot of this, specifically when it comes to technology, just came to us very fast and furious. That's my favorite term, very fast and furious. Yeah. And again, it just makes me think about my guest on Companion AI, because it comes at us so much quicker than governments can keep up. And then even one of the things that we talked about was like, what does government do? Like, how does it step in? What, how do you not violate, a person's freedoms by trying to create awareness for them? And either way, the technology is so much quicker than
it is. Yeah, no, and it will continue to be that, right? This is exponential, right? You and I are old enough to have remembered cameras that had film in them, telephones that had wires in them, right? There was no talking over a computer screen. There was none of that existed, right? And then like our kids' generation now, they went from the internet to now AI to the next quantum computing. So it's getting, it isn't generational anymore. It's like every 2, 3, 5 years now, right? It isn't like, there's this great leap forward that happened, that happens in 20 years. No, here's a leap forward that's happening like next year. Yeah. And we don't know these technologies. The way I describe it to others from a competition standpoint, because we have to win this AI war against China, because if we don't, every Western value, everything we believe on the West is in serious risk. The way I like to describe it is like everyone in the world has been working with an abacus, right? The old Chinese way of counting things with little beads, right? Oh, you got one. There you go. Right.
There's my abacus.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Think of it that way. Every country, every person has been working with an abacus.
Right.
And one night, someone drops a MacBook on everyone's desk. But the catch is there's no instruction manual to the MacBook. That's kind of like what AI is, right? We've all done this huge leap forward, but we're now starting to figure out, well, how do we do this, right? How does this work? And whoever can figure that out first, right? Whoever can get a handle on that is the one who's going to control the future. And here's the kicker now. So as you're working on that MacBook, a day goes by and someone drops in a brand new MacBook on your desk. So now it's you're trying to catch up and I don't think it's not going to change now. We've opened Pandora's box. You can't put it back in. Those who say, we should make AI illegal, or we can't use AI in this, or we can't use AI in that. Well, you can't, but the rest of the world will.
Yeah,
and I think
Yeah, I think that's, sorry to interrupt, but I think that's like a really important thing for people to remember, is that, and this is why it's important to have guests like you on the show, is that you may be opposed to it here in the States, but guess what? Everyone else is doing it and going to get ahead of us. So we can't be, sleeping bears that, we're going to get poked with the AI. Hey, we're ahead of you. It's, we have to stay focused on that regardless of what, whether people are opposed or not, because everyone else is, they're going to get ahead.
Oh yeah, they will continue. Oh yeah. And I'll even, look, I'll take what you just said one step further. You can now see, with everything we just discussed about, how our enemies can help shape that opinion of how we need to shut down AI, encourage it, amplify it, right? With either misinformation, fake news, whatever, right? Yeah. Oh, AI is bad for the environment. AI is bad for your health. AI, whatever it does, right? And to then prevent us internally from wanting to go down that path of advancing AI.
Yeah.
I mean that's the complexity of the world that we're living in right now.
Yeah.
Where and that does kind of get into what we talked about cloak and dagger,
Yeah.
where stuff is happening in the shadows, and we just don't know about it.
Yeah, almost like just to incite opposition, It's like,
Oh, yeah.
the big bad AI wolf, and
Yeah, right, exactly.
it's not good for you, and you
Exactly.
shouldn't want this, and it I think it's also a matter of, pay attention, you know it's not all about the dance moves on TikTok, right? Like, actually
Right.
try to be informed about what's going on in the world, even though that in itself is convoluted, right? Like, a lot of mixed messages, but I think a lot of people just need to pay more attention to what's
Well,
happening.
again, my favorite word, trade-offs. Um, Usually, when something's convenient, the more convenient it is, the more likely there's less security around it, whatever
Yeah.
it is, right? Yes,
Yeah.
security serves as a as a pause for
Right.
folks, right, and as a deterrent, but also as a
Right.
pause where it gives you a little bit of time to think about whether or not what it is you're focusing on is something that you want to continue to do.
Yeah.
So if you don't, if you take your security seriously, just shift your perspective a little bit and think about what information am I giving? What can be used against me? What does it mean? What am I giving up? And the other thing I like to think too is that if these apps, there's nothing free in life. We know that. And if the app is free or the service is free, then you're the product,
Right.
right? Think of it that way. Gmail
Yeah.
is free, but you share a lot of stuff with Gmail, right? That mortgage calculator app that you downloaded, it's
Yeah.
free, but you share a lot of information with that mortgage calculator
Yep.
app, right?
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thinking, and you know what? If you spend a couple extra bucks and you feel better about security, or if you just take an extra couple seconds and see, well, who owns this, or who put this app out, or who owns this software, or who owns this computer, or when I do backups at the company, where are my backups stored? Are they stored in
Yeah.
China? Are they stored here in the United States? Right?
Yeah.
The equipment that's being that we're buying for our network infrastructure and all that stuff, is that is that made in China? Is that made in the United States? Who owns that company? So you
Right.
start thinking along those lines, and then your behavior starts to change too. And the markets demand that. And once the markets start
Yeah.
to move in that direction, then it's good news for everybody. Because then I think more and more U.S. manufacturers are going to want to meet and try to meet that demand.
Right. Would you say the compromise to freedom is free stuff in the long run?
I'm always surprised at how quickly we're willing to like betray some very basic rules just for free,
Right.
right? And for free
Right.
crap that we don't care about or use,
Yeah.
or anything, right?
Yeah.
But just because it says free, we're
Right.
willing to do that. Yeah, I mean, we really have to start valuing who we are, what we do, and our information, our data. We need to
Right.
think of our data as like a separate thing, right? The same way you think of it as like, the same way you have a car, same way you have a house, same way you have a safe. Think of your data, right? All your ones and zeros as something that's of value.
So what else would you want people to know about their own part in, national security, for example? Right?
Right.
Everybody
Yeah.
thinks of it as like, I'm just one person. Who cares about me? We
Right.
talked about a lot of examples of that, but I guess the important thing is it may not be about you. It may
And
be
usually
about
it's
the
not.
people around you.
Right. And a lot of times it's not. It's about the people around you, something physically around you.
Yeah.
It's all of that, right? Or it could be where you work, right?
Yeah.
It could be, right? So all that stuff is there, and when you post it, what you're doing is every time you do anything with technology, you're giving information over, whether you think you're not. Right. Just turning on the laptop or the cell phone or the tablet, you're hitting something. If it's wireless, you're hitting a router. So now that router says you are here, right?
Yeah.
If it's a cell phone tower, same thing. You're telling the cell phone tower, I am here, and this is who I am, and then from there, it's just more and more. Well, I want to visit this site, and I want to download this information, and I'm going to upload this, and so all that stuff is there. It's always available. And the human intelligence side, we've been talking about data and data aggregation, but it's not unfathomable to think, right, that the adversaries of our country will recruit people to be spies in some of these technology sectors, right, and in places that they're interested in, and then give them information that they want, right? We call these people traitors, right? And if you look in the news, we arrest them all the time. But that happens, right? So if it's somebody, and it doesn't have to be. It could be somebody at a utility company. It could be somebody at a telecom. It could be, it could be someone who at the gym, right? Who has access to you and your personal information.
Yeah. I think the only thing we can really, really do is be aware, because technology is really not going to go anywhere, And,
no, it's not.
And again, it happens so quickly. I mean, I could see it. A quick example, I could see it just in my parents, right? Where they've been retired for a bit, so they haven't been using computers in a bit, and the things they get hung up on. And it's like almost like if you're not using a computer on a daily basis, or have a smartphone that you're using on a daily basis, in 6 months, you just have such a knowledge gap, because you haven't kept up with technology. It moves so quickly. It's not the same to use something day in and day out, right? All day long, and then, or like go off the grid for 6 months, and when you come back, it's like, well, what the heck happened? It's like your example about, having a new MacBook dropped in your lap, every day, because every day there's a new technology. But I see it with my parents, Yeah.
It's not what's happening. I mean, I struggle with the remote control now, so.
Do you?
It's happening to me. Huh? Yeah, I do. Yeah. I was like, I have to look at it. What? Oh, yes, this button, right? I have to, right? I have to do that.
Yeah.
And I catch myself. I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think things like devices, they go simplifying them more and more and more. But if you've got that gap, you forget, like, what does the little gear button, what is that again?
Right.
Oh, it's your settings, Some people don't know that, right? Like,
well, have you ever noticed that the save button is a floppy disk?
Yes.
Why? When was the last time you saw a floppy disk? Ask one of your kids. Ask one of your kids. Hey, what is that? Yeah, and see if they know what that is.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And I mean, I have, my two kids are literally in different generations, right? One remembers a bit of the analog world, and one does not even realize it existed. One had a, talk and text phone when they were younger. The other one only knew smartphones. And, they're so different in the way that they think, because of the information that was accessible to them when they were younger.
What shaped them.
Yeah. So it's an interesting world. I think you've done, some very admirable stuff. I don't know all of it. I'll never know all of it. But I really thank you for being on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
I love having these chats. Yeah. No, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of everything that you're doing. I think, I think the more people get an opportunity to just converse and chat and get to learn about things that they might not feel comfortable about, or things that they don't know anything about, It makes things better. It bridges a lot of gaps, and it brings us closer, right? It lends more perspective to things that a lot of times we might have dismissed. So good luck to you, and do more of these things, and make everything a better place.
Thanks for your interest in sticking around to watch or listen to my podcast, dedicated to providing tools and resources to help you claim and live your best life. If you're loving these conversations, make sure you hit that bell to subscribe or follow and never miss an episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. Don't forget to tap the like and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's grow this community of curious, driven minds together.